A young widow was buried in debt until a rancher took responsibility and gave her a home. The red dust of Erivo's 9 clung to everything. Lyra Jansen brushed it off her sleeves, her hands raw from hours of hard labor. The small farm that she and her late husband had tried to maintain stretched across the dry plain, dotted with stubborn plants and the skeletal remains of what once had been a flourishing crop. The wind howled through the alien trees, carrying with it the faint cries of distant creatures that lived on the edge of the colony. Erivo's 9 was beautiful in a dangerous way, but Lyra felt its beauty more as a curse than a gift these days. Since her husband, Cale, had died 6 months ago, Lyra's life had become a constant battle. She had buried him beneath a small mound near the farmhouse, her hands trembling as she worked the soil. The colony had offered condolences, but sympathy did not pay the bills, and her debts had grown larger than the small plot of land she called home. Machines she could not repair, seeds she could not afford, and creditors who had grown impatient. They all surrounded her like predators waiting for the weakest moment. Lyra took a deep breath, letting the bitter wind sting her face. She walked to the edge of the field and looked at the livestock. The creatures were strange even by colony standards, large, muscular, covered with thin, iridescent scales that glimmered under the twin suns. They were difficult to manage, prone to panic, and required constant attention. One of the younger ones, a calf-like beast with 6 legs and eyes like molten gold, stumbled in the dust, whimpering. Lyra's heart tightened. She had to protect them or all would be lost. "Come on," she muttered softly, her voice breaking against the roar of the wind. She grabbed a wooden rod, more to give herself confidence than for any real use. Her body was weary, but her mind was sharp. Lyra had learned early that on a planet like Erivo's 9, cleverness mattered as much as strength. She guided the young creature gently, whispering reassurances. Slowly, it found its footing. For a moment, Lyra allowed herself to smile, the tiniest spark of hope flickering in her chest. Her smile faded as the metallic hum of distant hovercraft reached her ears. The sound was familiar, the collectors from the colony's trade office, and they usually did not bring good news. Lyra's stomach sank. The small hovercraft landed roughly at the edge of her property, kicking up a cloud of red dust. 2 men in uniform stepped out, their expressions polite but firm. "Lyra Jansen?" one of them asked. He held a tablet with a list of numbers that made her chest tighten. "Yes," she said, her voice small. "We need to discuss your farm debts," the man said. "The Colony Council has set a final deadline. If payments are not made by next week, the property will be repossessed." Lyra swallowed hard. She had expected this, but hearing it aloud made the situation even more real. "I'll find a way," she said, though she did not believe it herself. Her hands trembled as she clenched them at her sides. "I just need more time." The men nodded politely. "Time is up. But we hope you manage." They left as quickly as they had come, the hovercraft's engines screaming against the wind. Lyra stood frozen for a moment, her mind spinning. How could she possibly pay off the debts? Every effort she made seemed to push her deeper into the red. She felt a sharp sting of hopelessness. She sank to the ground, dust clinging to her hair and face. "Cale," she whispered, "I can't do this alone." The memory of her husband's laughter and his careful hands guiding hers over this same land haunted her. She remembered the evenings they spent under the twin suns, planning a future that now seemed impossible. Now all that remained was her stubborn will to survive. Lyra stood slowly, brushing the dust from her clothes. The farm needed her. The livestock needed her. Even if the colony had written her off, she refused to give up. She began walking toward the barn, each step heavy but determined. She had learned early on that humans could endure far more than they thought, and perhaps that endurance would see her through this storm as well. Inside the barn, she checked on her herd. Each creature was restless, picking at the dry straw. She moved among them, speaking softly, her fingers running along the iridescent scales of a large bull. She whispered words she hoped would calm them, words she did not even know if they understood. The creatures trusted her, and that trust gave her strength. As the day wore on, Lyra worked tirelessly. She repaired fences, carried water from the distant reservoir, and tended to the sickly plants struggling to grow in the arid soil. The twin suns dipped low in the sky, painting the landscape in shades of orange and crimson. Lyra paused for a moment, letting the beauty wash over her, even as worry gnawed at the edges of her mind. A distant howl interrupted her thoughts, sharp and eerie. Lyra's heart skipped. Erivos 9 was home to many predators, and some were bold enough to come close to human settlements. She grabbed a makeshift spear and peered into the deepening shadows. Nothing appeared immediately, but her instincts told her the danger was real. Every day on this planet was a battle, and humans had to fight not only for survival but for every small piece of peace. Night fell quickly. Lyra lit a small fire inside the barn, the warmth and light a fragile shield against the vast darkness outside. She cooked a small meal from the meager supplies she had left. The food tasted bland, but it nourished her body. Her mind, however, was restless, turning over numbers, possibilities, and what little options she had left. As she cleaned up, she heard the faint sound of engines again. This time the approach was different, slower, steadier, deliberate. Lyra's heart thudded in her chest. She stepped outside, squinting into the darkness. A figure appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the fading sunlight. The person rode a large, armored beast, moving with confidence and skill that suggested experience. The figure stopped at the edge of her property, raising a hand in greeting. Lyra hesitated, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. The stranger dismounted, dust swirling around them. As he approached, she saw the weathered face of a man who had clearly seen much of the galaxy. His eyes, however, held a sharp curiosity, and when he spoke, his voice was calm but commanding. "You manage this farm alone?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra replied cautiously. "I have no one else." The man nodded slowly, as if reading her determination like an open book. "Name's Dorian Cade. I hear this planet is tough. Looks like you're tougher." Lyra's brow furrowed. "I don't know what you want," she said. "I might be able to help," he said simply. "But you have to trust me and you have to work with me." The wind howled again, and the first stars of Erivos 9 night sky appeared. Lyra looked at the stranger, unsure whether to hope or to be wary. Her life had changed forever the moment he appeared. And somehow, deep inside, she felt that this was the beginning of something she had been waiting for, something that could lift her out of the shadows that had consumed her since Kale's death. Lyra inhaled, steadying herself. "All right," she said, her voice firm. "I'll listen." Dorian's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Good, because if we work together, maybe this farm and maybe you can survive." And for the first time in months, Lyra felt a spark of hope. The battle was not over, but for the first time, she felt she would not have to fight alone. The morning on Erivos 9 arrived like a slow fire. The twin suns rose over the dusty horizon, casting long shadows across Lyra Jansen's struggling farm. She awoke before dawn, her body stiff and sore, but determination burned in her chest. She had promised herself she would not let despair claim her today, not while there was even a glimmer of hope. Outside, the red soil sparkled faintly under the sun's early light. Lyra walked toward the barn, her boots crunching on the brittle ground. The creatures she had tended to yesterday were already stirring, their multi-legged forms moving gracefully despite the harshness of the environment. Lyra's hand instinctively reached out to a young calf-like creature, brushing its iridescent scales. It nudged her gently, as if sensing the uncertainty in her heart. She was so absorbed in her morning routine that the sound of hooves pounding against the dirt startled her. She looked up just in time to see a large figure riding a massive armored beast coming down the path. The creature's 6 legs moved with precise coordination, and dust swirled around its feet like miniature sandstorms. The rider, of course, was Dorian Cade. Dorian dismounted with an ease that only years of experience could bring. His eyes scanned the farm with sharp, assessing precision. He moved with the confidence of someone who had survived countless challenges on distant worlds. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and unease. There was something about him that radiated authority, but it wasn't threatening. It was dependable. "You're early," Lyra said cautiously, stepping closer. "Morning starts before the sun's rise on a planet like this," Dorian replied. He had a calm, even tone, but it carried a weight that made Lyra straighten up involuntarily. "The herd needs attention, and so do you." Lyra frowned. "I can handle it," she said, though her body ached from yesterday's labors. "I don't doubt that," Dorian said, "but sometimes handling things means knowing when to ask for help." He reached into a bag slung across his shoulder and pulled out a small device, no bigger than her hand. It buzzed softly as he activated it, sending a holographic map of the property into the air. The lines traced the boundaries of her farm, the locations of the livestock, and even some weak spots in the fences. Lyra blinked. What is that?" "Technology," he said simply. "I can help you manage the herd, protect the crops, and maybe, just maybe, help you keep your home." His eyes met hers. "But it will take work and trust." Lyra hesitated. The debt still loomed over her like a dark cloud. She could barely feed herself, let alone pay off the colony council. Could she trust a stranger? Yet something about Dorian's presence felt different. For the first time in months, she sensed the possibility of a way forward. I'll try," she said finally. "But I'm not sure I can do everything you want." "You don't have to do everything," Dorian replied, smiling faintly. "Just what matters most, step by step." They began with the herd. Dorian showed her how to use a small, hovering drone to monitor the animal's health. The drone could track the creatures' movements, detect injuries, and even alert them if any wandered too far. Lyra marveled at the technology. On a world like Erivos 9, survival often depended on clever use of tools, and humans, as Dorian seemed to know, were the cleverest creatures of all. As the suns climbed higher, a loud commotion erupted near the edge of the farm. One of the younger livestock had bolted, terrified by something in the distance. Lyra sprinted toward it, but Dorian was already ahead, guiding the creature with calm authority. Together, they corralled the panicked animal back into safety. "You see," Dorian said as they watched the creature settle, "humans have instincts. You're fast, smart, and brave, but combining that with a little technology makes you nearly unstoppable." Lyra couldn't help but smile, despite the exhaustion clawing at her. "I suppose, but what about the debts?" she asked. "I can't survive if the colony takes everything." Dorian's expression turned serious. "That's why I'm here. I've seen what can be done when people refuse to give up. If you follow through, work hard, and use your head, we can turn this farm into something valuable, enough to settle the debts and then some." The words felt almost too good to be true, but the determination in Dorian's eyes was real. Lyra nodded, gripping her hands together to steady herself. She had nothing left to lose and perhaps everything to gain. For the next several days, Dorian stayed at the farm. Together, they repaired broken fences, reinforced the barns, and improved the irrigation system. Lyra learned quickly, absorbing every instruction and observation. She discovered that even simple changes, like adjusting water flow for certain alien crops, could make a huge difference. Dorian encouraged her, but he also pushed her beyond her comfort zone. One afternoon, while checking the perimeter of the farm, Dorian paused. "Lyra," he said, "there's something you need to understand about this planet." "What is it?" she asked. "Erivos 9 isn't forgiving. Wildlife, weather, and even neighboring ranchers will test you. And sometimes you'll face threats you can't predict." He pointed to a distant ridge where a pack of large predators slinked in the shadows. Their scales reflected the sun's light, sharp claws gleaming. "But humans, Humans survive where others fail. You've already shown that. Lyra swallowed hard. The predators were massive and intimidating, but she remembered how she had saved the young calf days before. She felt a flicker of pride. I can handle it, she said, more firmly than she intended. I know you can, Dorian replied. That's why I'm here. To help you grow stronger, not weaker. To show you that even when the odds are against you, humans can endure and thrive. That night, Lyra sat under the twin sun's fading glow, thinking about the past months. She had felt lost, burdened by debt and surrounded by danger. But now, with Dorian's guidance, she felt a spark of hope. The farm was beginning to transform, and she was beginning to transform with it. Humans, she realized, had an innate ability to adapt, to think, to fight, and to care, even on a hostile world. The following days were a whirlwind of work. Dorian introduced her to new tools, from automated feeding systems to advanced sensors that could detect soil health. Lyra worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night. Her muscles ached and her hands were raw, but the sense of progress was exhilarating. One morning, as the suns rose, a strange hum echoed across the fields. The livestock became agitated, ears twitching, scales shimmering nervously. Lyra and Dorian ran toward the sound. On the far edge of the farm, a group of scavenger drones from a rival ranch hovered menacingly. They were small but aggressive, designed to steal livestock or damage crops. Looks like trouble, Dorian said, his jaw tight. Time to see if you've learned anything. Lyra took a deep breath. She had absorbed Dorian's lessons, memorized every trick, and observed the animal's behavior. She activated one of the small defense drones and guided it toward the intruders. The drone buzzed and emitted a sharp pulse, forcing the scavengers to retreat. She repeated the process until all were gone. Dorian watched silently, then clapped her on the shoulder. Not bad at all, you're learning fast. Humans are resilient, clever, resourceful, and bold. I've seen many in my time, but you're something else. Lyra felt a swell of pride, mixed with exhaustion. For the first time, she understood that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about intelligence, strategy, and determination. Humans could endure and adapt in ways no one else could. She was beginning to believe that she might not only survive but thrive. Days turned into weeks. The farm grew stronger, the crops healthier, and the livestock calmer. Lyra and Dorian developed a rhythm, a partnership built on trust and respect. The colony began to take notice of her progress. Messages of encouragement arrived, and even neighboring ranchers offered tentative nods of acknowledgement. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in red and gold, Dorian stood beside Lyra on the porch of the farmhouse. "Look at this," he said quietly. "You've turned a struggling farm into something promising, and you've done it mostly on your own." Lyra smiled, though her heart still held worry. The debts remained and danger still lurked. But she had learned a vital truth. Humans had an unyielding spirit. They could face adversity, adapt, and rise above. With determination and guidance, they could turn even the harshest world into a home. And for the first time, Lyra felt she could truly believe that her life was no longer defined by loss or debt, but by courage, hope, and the relentless power of the human spirit. The mornings on Erivo's 9 were sharp and cold, the twin suns barely cutting through the lingering dust. Of the night, Lyra Jansen rose before the suns had fully risen, her body still sore from the previous day's labor. The farm was growing stronger under her hands and Dorian Cade's guidance, yet Lyra knew the real test had not yet come. Survival on Erivo's 9 demanded more than skill. It demanded courage, quick thinking, and an unyielding spirit. Lyra stepped outside and inhaled the crisp air. The livestock were moving steadily across the field, their multi-legged forms glinting in the sunlight. The new systems Dorian had installed, a combination of drones, automated feeding units, and reinforced fences, were already making a difference. But Lyra's heart was uneasy. She sensed the planet testing her. Every shadow seemed to flicker with the possibility of danger. Dorian arrived soon after, riding his massive, armored beast. He dismounted with his usual calm efficiency, eyes scanning the horizon. "Morning, Lyra," he called. "We have a challenge today." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "What kind of challenge?" Dorian's gaze shifted toward the distant ridge. "Predators, large ones, and they're hungry." Lyra felt a chill, but she squared her shoulders. "Then we deal with them," she said firmly. The predators were massive, covered in shimmering scales like the livestock but sharper, leaner, and clearly built for hunting. They moved with eerie precision, and their golden eyes glinted with intelligence. Lyra remembered Dorian's words, "Humans survive where others fail." She had to rely on her instincts, strategy, and courage. Dorian handed her a small control device. "The drones will assist you, but you make the decisions. Keep the herd safe." Lyra nodded, her hands gripping the device tightly. She activated the drones, sending them into a defensive pattern around the herd. The predators hesitated, watching the strange, buzzing machines with cautious curiosity, but hunger drove them forward. The first predator lunged. Lyra's heart pounded as she directed a drone to intercept, sending a blinding light pulse toward the creature. It shrieked and retreated slightly, but more were coming. Lyra shouted commands, guiding the drones with precision. The herd moved together, following her instructions. Every movement, every decision mattered. Hours passed like this. Lyra felt herself growing tired, but she refused to give in. Sweat mixed with the red dust on her face, her hands aching from the constant adjustments. She remembered Kale's teachings, Dorian's lessons, and the inner strength that had kept her alive this long. Humans adapted, humans survived, humans thrived, and she intended to prove it. Finally, the predators retreated, discouraged by the coordinated defense and human ingenuity. Lyra dropped the control device and sank to the ground, breathing heavily. Dorian approached, his face a mixture of pride and relief. "Not bad at all," he said. "You stayed calm, adapted quickly, and kept the herd safe. That's the mark of a human who can survive anything." Lyra wiped her brow and smiled weakly. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Dorian shook his head. "No, you did it. I just showed you the tools." Humans win because of heart and mind, not just machines. The sun was high now, beating down on the farm. Lyra felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had faced real danger and survived. She had learned that intelligence, courage, and perseverance were as vital as any weapon or tool. But the challenges on Erivo's 9 were far from over. That afternoon, a strange sound came from the northern pasture. A series of low hums, mechanical and deliberate, echoed across the land. Lyra froze. "Not again," she muttered. Dorian arrived immediately. "Rival ranchers," he said grimly. "They're testing us. Don't let them steal anything." Lyra's hands trembled as she activated the defense drones. The rival ranchers were bold, sending multiple hovering units to the farm's edge, attempting to herd away some of the livestock. Lyra studied their movements carefully. Panic would be disastrous. She needed a plan. Using the drone's sensors, she tracked the incoming units, predicting their paths and intercepting them strategically. Each movement required precision and timing. She shouted instructions to Dorian as he coordinated the herd's movement. Together, human and technology, they defended their home. The battle continued for hours. Dust, sunlight, and the sounds of the machines created a chaotic symphony around them. Yet Lyra remained calm. She analyzed, adapted, and acted. Her mind worked faster than ever before. Humans were clever, resourceful, and resilient. The invading units faltered, retreating one by one. Lyra's heart raced as she watched the last drone fly away, leaving her farm intact. Dorian clapped her shoulder. "You did it again. That's not just surviving, that's thriving. Humans can outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast. You proved it." Lyra let herself collapse into the dirt for a moment, laughing despite the fatigue. I, I think I'm getting the hang of it, she said. The next few days brought more routine work but also unexpected challenges. Some of the livestock fell ill due to a sudden weather shift, and Lyra had to use her knowledge of alien biology to treat them. Others wandered too far, testing her ability to manage the terrain. Each day was a trial, each moment a lesson in adaptability. But every challenge she overcame strengthened her confidence and skill. One evening, while checking the northern fence, Lyra noticed faint tracks in the dust. Dorian appeared behind her. "You see that?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "Predators or another rival?" "Both," he said. Erivo's 9 teaches harsh lessons. You have to stay alert at all times, but you've learned faster than most humans I've trained. Lyra swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She had faced danger before, but now she understood something vital. Survival wasn't just about strength or luck. It was about intelligence, foresight, and courage, the very qualities that made humans remarkable. The night was cold and silent after that. Lyra sat by the small fire in the barn, her mind racing. She thought of Kale, of the life she had lost, and of the future she was building. Dorian's presence had changed everything. He had given her guidance, but he had also shown her something more important. Humans could endure, adapt, and grow even in the most hostile environments. Over the next few weeks, the farm began to flourish. Crops grew stronger, livestock healthier, and the automated systems functioned flawlessly. Lyra had transformed from a struggling widow into a competent, resourceful farmer. Word of her progress spread across the colony, and even neighboring ranchers began to acknowledge her skill. One afternoon, Dorian called her to the ridge overlooking the farm. The twin suns glinted off the red dust as they surveyed the land below. "Look at this," he said. "You've taken a farm on the brink of ruin and made it thrive. That's human ingenuity, determination, and courage at work." Lyra smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. She had come so far in such a short time. She had faced predators, rival ranchers, and the unforgiving environment and survived. Humans, she realized, were stronger than any obstacle. Dorian's expression grew serious. "But there's more to come. Erivo's 9 will keep testing you. And soon, we may face threats no technology can fully protect against. You'll need to rely on everything you've learned and more." Lyra felt a spark of excitement mingled with fear. She knew he was right. The trials of the planet were far from over. But she also knew something else. She was ready. Humans could adapt, endure, and overcome. And she would prove it, no matter what came next. That night, as the suns dipped below the horizon and the stars of Erivo's 9 began to twinkle, Lyra looked over her farm. The fences were strong, the livestock safe, and her crops beginning to thrive. She felt a sense of accomplishment she had not known in months. But more importantly, she felt a sense of possibility, a vision of a future she could build with her own hands. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. And she knew, deep in her heart, that humans were capable of achieving the impossible, even on a harsh world like Erivo's 9. The sky over Erivo's 9 was unusually dark that morning. A storm brewed in the distance, the twin suns struggling to break through thick, swirling clouds. Lyra Jansen stood on the ridge overlooking her farm, her eyes scanning the horizon. Despite all her hard work, her stomach tightened with unease. Dorian Cade had warned her that the planet always tested its settlers, but today she could feel a threat unlike anything before approaching. Dorian rode up beside her on his armored beast, the creature's 6 legs moving with perfect balance over the uneven ground. "Something's coming," he said, his voice low but steady. "And it's not just the weather this time." Lyra swallowed hard. She had faced predators, rival ranchers, and harsh storms, but there was a cold, unfamiliar fear in her chest. "What is it?" she asked. Dorian's eyes narrowed. "A rogue alien species. They're aggressive, fast, and they've been seen attacking settlements nearby. I've tracked their movements. They're heading straight for your farm." Lyra's heart raced. She had spent weeks building this farm, defending it with drones, careful planning, and human ingenuity. Losing it now seemed unbearable. Yet deep inside she felt a spark of determination. Humans didn't give up. Humans adapted. Humans fought and survived. "We can't let them take the herd," she said, her voice firm. "We have to stop them." Dorian nodded. "We'll need every advantage. The drones, the fences, the terrain, you'll use all of it. And humans, you'll need all your courage and quick thinking." They spent the next hours preparing. Lyra and Dorian moved livestock to safer areas, fortified the fences, and positioned the defense drones strategically around the property. Every inch of the farm became a line of defense. Lyra's mind raced as she considered all possible outcomes, planning contingencies for each one. Humans thrived because of their ingenuity, and she would prove it. By mid-afternoon, the first scouts arrived, sleek, alien creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. They moved with lightning speed, their forms shifting like shadows across the red dust. The livestock panicked, but Lyra remained calm. She activated the drones and guided the herd toward a more protected area. The creatures attacked, but the drones pulsed with bright light, forcing the aliens back temporarily. "Keep them contained," Dorian shouted, directing the armored beasts to block potential escape routes. Lyra's heart pounded as she coordinated the drones, each decision a life-or-death choice. Humans were clever, adaptable, and brave, and she relied on all three qualities to stay ahead of the attackers. Hours passed in a blur of dust, noise, and tension. The rogue aliens were relentless, attacking in waves, testing every defense. Lyra worked tirelessly, moving faster than she had ever moved, thinking faster than she had ever thought. Every action mattered. Humans had survived worse. Humans had conquered impossible odds. And she would not let this farm, her home, fall. At one point, a large alien lunged at the livestock. Lyra shouted to Dorian, who maneuvered his armored beast to intercept. Together, they guided the creature away from the herd. Lyra activated a pulse from the drones and the alien shrieked, retreating momentarily. It was a small victory, but in a battle like this, small victories mattered. "Good work," Dorian shouted. "Humans survive because we learn, adapt, and act when others freeze." "Keep moving, keep thinking." Lyra nodded, determination flaring in her chest. She guided the drones, repositioned the herd, and used the terrain to their advantage. The aliens, clever as they were, had not accounted for the combination of human ingenuity, experience, and adaptability. Slowly, the tide of the battle began to turn. By nightfall, the remaining aliens had retreated, their glowing eyes disappearing into the darkness beyond the farm. The livestock were safe, the fences held, and the drones still hummed softly in the background, ready for any further threats. Lyra sank to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Humans had survived and humans had won. Dorian dismounted beside her. "You did it," he said simply. "The farm is safe. You kept the herd alive, defended the land, and showed the true strength of humans. Adaptable, clever, and courageous. That's why we survive where others fail." Lyra smiled, fatigue mixing with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "No," Dorian replied. "You did it. I just helped guide. Humans win because of heart and mind. You proved that today." The next few days were quieter, but the farm was never truly at rest. Repairs had to be made, livestock fed, and drones maintained. Lyra threw herself into the work, each action reinforcing her growing confidence. Humans thrived not just by surviving battles, but by learning from them, adapting, and improving. And Lyra had learned quickly. One afternoon, a message arrived from the colony council. Lyra's progress had been noticed. They praised her ingenuity, courage, and perseverance, and offered assistance to further strengthen the farm. For the first time, the burdens of debt felt less suffocating. Humans had a way of creating solutions even when situations seemed hopeless. That evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in orange and gold, Lyra and Dorian walked among the livestock. The farm was alive with quiet movement, the creatures grazing peacefully. Lyra felt a sense of connection she had not known before, the connection between human and land, human and technology, human and animal. Humans were capable of building, protecting, and nurturing, even in a world designed to test them. Dorian paused beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You've done more than just survive, Lyra. You've inspired the colony. You've shown them what humans are capable of. Courage, intelligence, determination. These things make humans unstoppable." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. For months she had lived under the shadow of loss and debt, struggling alone. Now she had a home, a purpose, and proof that humans could triumph against adversity. That night, a soft breeze swept across the farm. Lyra sat on the porch, looking at the stars beginning to twinkle in the sky. The battle against the rogue aliens had been a test, a trial by fire, and humans had passed. They adapted, survived, and thrived. She felt a deep sense of pride and hope. Dorian joined her, sitting quietly. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Erivos 9 will keep testing us, but humans can handle it. We just have to keep moving forward." Lyra nodded. "And we will," she said. "We have to, for the farm, for the colony, for ourselves." The nights were quiet after that, but the lessons remained. Humans survived because they could think, adapt, and act when others could not. Lyra realized that even in the harshest environments, humans had a unique ability to turn challenges into opportunities, danger into triumph, and fear into courage. Weeks passed, and the farm continued to grow stronger. The livestock thrived, crops began to flourish, and the drones functioned perfectly. Lyra had learned to manage every aspect of the farm with skill and precision. Humans were capable of extraordinary things, even on a world that seemed determined to break them. Then, one evening, a message arrived from Dorian's network. Other colonies had faced similar threats, and settlers were struggling. Lyra felt a spark of purpose beyond her farm. Humans didn't just survive for themselves, they thrived for the future, for their communities, and for each other. "Dorian," she said, her voice filled with determination, "we can help them. We can show them what humans are capable of." Dorian smiled. "That's exactly what we'll do. Humans survive together. Humans thrive together." As the twin suns disappeared below the horizon and the stars shone brightly above Erivos 9, Lyra looked out over her farm. She had faced predators, rival ranchers, and rogue aliens. She had endured storms and fear, and she had triumphed. Humans had proven their resilience, intelligence, and courage. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the wind against her face. She was no longer a widow buried in debt and despair. She was a leader, a protector, and a survivor. Humans thrived not because the world was easy, but because they refused to give up. And Lyra knew that no matter what came next, humans would continue to triumph. The night was calm, but Lyra's mind was alive with possibilities. She had seen what humans could do when they worked together, when they adapted, and when they refused to surrender. The farm was safe, the colony inspired, and her spirit stronger than ever. Humans had faced the harshness of Erivos 9, and they had won. Lyra stood, feeling the ground beneath her feet, and knew that the future was wide open. Humans survived, humans thrived, and humans would continue to rise, no matter how harsh the galaxy became. And for the first time in months, she felt truly at home. The morning light of Erivos 9 spilled over Lyra Jansen's farm like a promise. The twin suns rose over the red horizon, illuminating the fences, barns, and grazing livestock. For the first time in months, Lyra could breathe without the weight of despair pressing against her chest. The farm thrived, and with Dorian Cade by her side, she felt a sense of safety and purpose she had not known since Kale's death. Lyra stepped outside, brushing the lingering dust from her sleeves. The livestock stirred, moving gracefully across the field, their iridescent scales catching the sunlight. The drones hummed softly, patrolling the perimeter, ensuring that no threat could approach unnoticed. Everything felt alive, organized, and safe. For the first time, she realized that survival was no longer enough. She had created a home. Dorian rode up on his armored beast, his expression thoughtful but satisfied. "Morning, Lyra," he said, dismounting. "The farm looks strong." "You've done this, not me," Lyra smiled. "It feels like it's really mine now. I can see a future here." She paused, looking out at the horizon. "A future where humans can thrive even on a world like this." Dorian nodded. "Humans are incredible. We adapt, we endure, and we create opportunities when none seem possible. You've proven that every single day." The day began with routine tasks, but there was a sense of excitement in the air. Colony officials were scheduled to visit, bringing supplies, technology upgrades, and news of the wider settlements. Lyra had been invited to speak about her success, a recognition of the ingenuity and courage that humans could display even in the harshest environments. When the officials arrived, Lyra met them with quiet confidence. She guided them through the farm, explaining the systems she and Dorian had implemented, showing how the drones monitored livestock and crops, and detailing the strategies she had used to fend off predators and rival ranchers. The officials were impressed, nodding in admiration at the careful planning and execution. "This is remarkable," one of them said. "Few settlers manage to thrive under such harsh conditions. You've shown not only resilience but leadership." Lyra felt a swell of pride. Leadership had never been her goal, but she realized that humans had a natural ability to rise to challenges and inspire others. She had survived, she had adapted, and she had grown stronger, not just for herself, but for the colony, for her neighbors, and for the future. As the officials departed, promising continued support, Lyra and Dorian returned to the farmhouse. The sun was high, warming the red soil beneath their feet. Lyra watched as her livestock grazed peacefully, their forms moving like shadows of the past struggles now behind her. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Lyra asked, turning to Dorian. "All the time," he replied. "But this is only the beginning. Erivos 9 will continue to test us. Other colonies face challenges too, but humans find a way. You've proven that." Lyra smiled, remembering the long days and nights of labor, the battles with predators and rival ranchers, the storms and the dust, the moments when she felt on the edge of giving up. All those struggles had shaped her into someone stronger, sharper, and wiser. Humans survived through courage, determination, and the ability to think, adapt, and act, and she had done all of that. That evening, the farm settled into quiet calm. Lyra walked along the ridge, watching the twin suns sink into the horizon. The light painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The air was filled with the gentle hum of the drones and the soft sounds of grazing livestock. Lyra felt a profound connection to the land, to the animals, to Dorian, and to the human spirit that had carried her this far. Dorian joined her, leaning on the railing of the porch. "You've changed more than the farm, Lyra," he said. "You've changed yourself. You've grown into someone who can face any challenge. Humans thrive because we learn, adapt, and rise to every occasion. You embody that." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. "I never thought I could do this," she admitted. "I thought I would always be buried in debt, struggling alone. But now I feel like I have a place, a home, a purpose." "And you do," Dorian replied. "This farm, the livestock, the colony, they're all part of what humans can achieve. Courage, ingenuity, and heart, those are what make humans unstoppable." Over the following weeks, the farm continued to flourish. Crops grew lush and healthy, livestock thrived under careful management, and the automated systems ensured efficiency and safety. News of Lyra's success spread throughout the colony, inspiring other settlers. Humans were remarkable not because the universe was easy, but because they refused to give up in the face of adversity. One morning, Lyra received a message from the colony council. They were facing a critical shortage of food and resources, and they requested her guidance and expertise. Humans survived not just for themselves, but for each other. Lyra realized she could extend the knowledge and systems she had developed to help the wider colony thrive. She met with Dorian in the barn, excitement shining in her eyes. "We can help them," she said. "We can show them what humans are capable of. We can make sure no one has to struggle the way I did." Dorian smiled, his expression proud. "Exactly. Humans don't just survive alone. We survive together and we thrive together. You've learned that well." Together, they began planning outreach, sharing strategies, and helping neighboring settlements implement systems for sustainable farming, livestock management, and defense against predators. Lyra realized that her struggles had given her not only survival skills but leadership skills. Humans were capable of extraordinary achievements when they worked together, when they shared knowledge, and when they refused to surrender to fear. One evening, after a long day of planning and teaching, Lyra walked across the ridge to watch the sunset. The farm below her was alive with activity. The drones patrolled, livestock grazed peacefully, and settlers moved confidently through the fields. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humans could adapt, endure, and flourish. She had proven it on her own farm, and now she could help the colony prosper. Dorian appeared beside her, standing silently for a moment. "You've done something remarkable, Lyra. Not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Humans thrive because they believe in possibility and take action. You've shown that beautifully." Lyra smiled, the weight of the past months lifting from her shoulders. "I feel like I've finally come home," she said softly. "This farm, this life, I can finally breathe." As the sun set and stars began to appear in the sky, Lyra felt a sense of peace and hope that had eluded her for so long. The trials, the loss, and the struggles had forged her into someone strong, capable, and courageous. Humans endured not because the path was easy, but because they refused to surrender, because they fought with intelligence and heart, and because they believed in a better future. And now, Lyra's future looked brighter than she could have ever imagined. She looked at Dorian, who nodded in quiet understanding. Together, they had turned a struggling farm into a thriving hub of hope, resilience, and progress. Humans had triumphed, not just over challenges but over despair itself. Lyra knew the galaxy held more dangers, more uncertainties, and more trials, but she no longer feared them. Humans could survive anything and they could thrive anywhere. She had become living proof of that truth. As the night settled over Erivos 9, Lyra stood on the porch of her home, feeling the cool breeze and watching the stars twinkle above. Her debts were cleared, her farm was safe, and her community respected her. She had not only survived but had grown stronger, wiser, and more capable. Humans, she realized, were unstoppable when they worked together, adapted to challenges, and never gave up. A soft smile spread across her face. This was her new dawn, her second chance at life, hope, and purpose. Humans thrived, humans endured, and humans would continue to rise above every challenge. And Lyra Jansen, once a widow buried in debt, was living proof. She turned to Dorian, who had become not just a partner in work but a trusted friend. "We've done it," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, "and we'll continue to do it. Humans don't stop. We keep going, keep learning, and keep thriving. That's who we are." The wind swept across the farm, carrying with it the promise of a future full of possibility. Lyra took a deep breath, letting it fill her with hope, courage, and determination. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but she knew that as long as humans believed in themselves, they could face anything. And for Lyra, this was more than survival. This was triumph. A new dawn had truly arrived.